Welcome. I am Lou Ignarro, Nobel laureate in medicine and chair of the scientific committee on Dialogs Beyond Borders, presented by the Menarini International Foundation. Today I am delighted to present our interview with Professor Marek Glezerman, who is Professor Emeritus in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Tel Aviv University in Israel. He is also director of the Research Center for Gender and Sex-Conscious Medicine at the Rabin Medical Center. In this interview, Professor Glezerman will explain to us how gender and sex-conscious medicine allows the physician to provide a more appropriate diagnosis and treatment of patients. He also discusses the role of epigenetics in fetal development. I hope you enjoyed this interview.
Marek Glezerman is Professor Emeritus of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the Tel Aviv University and Rabin Medical Center in Israel, and past president of the International Society for Gender Medicine. This is Dialogs Beyond Borders, a project organized by Fondazione Internazionale Menarini, and we're going to talk about science, its boundaries, and its relationship with other areas of human culture. So welcome, Professor Glezerman. First of all, you were trained as a gynecologist, but you also have interest in gender medicine. How can we avoid to consider gender medicine as the science of female disease, the so-called bikini medicine? How can we keep men inside this way of looking at medicine?
Well, thank you. This is a very basic and very critical question, actually. And we have been talking and discussing this issue in the Israel Society and also in the International Society for many years. Because actually, when we speak about gender medicine, it means something else, something completely different. Gender is a social construct. Gender has actually nothing to do too much with medicine. It has to do with all aspects of life. That is how the person defines herself or himself, how society defines a person in a given culture, and so on. Gender is even much more than that. It's a wide spectrum of not only binary genders, men and women, but the whole large spectrum. So this is one aspect which has to do with medicine, but can live without medicine, totally. But it affects health and disease. And the other aspect is sex, our biological sex, the way our cells have been created and the chromosomal content of the cells. Because these are two different categories which overlap, the Israel Society has changed 3 years ago, the name from the Israel Society of Gender Medicine to the Israel Society for Sex and Gender Conscious Medicine. And that's the whole story, actually. In order to treat a human being, you have to be aware and conscious about that the female body and the male body differs in all aspects. It's not only the genitals, it's not only the fact that men are about 10% larger and heavier than women, and that women can give birth. Every single system in our body functions differently. So the sex and gender conscious medicine is not upgrade of gynecology, the achievement of better medicine, a better quality of medicine for men and women alike. Now, just to complete that, most diseases and most drugs have been studied and still are studied in women. And what we have learned in men, and what we have learned we apply in women. But there are also diseases which have been studied mostly in women, and the results applied on men. I just remind you of osteoporosis, for example. Every woman in a certain age group will be sent to bone density, men not. And men also can break their bones and have osteoporosis and all that. Gender and sex conscious medicine deals with men and women, with male children and female children, in order to improve the quality of medicine.
We are going towards personalized medicine. We are talking more and more about precision medicine and tailored made medicine. So do we still need gender medicine? We're not talking about individuals, regardless their gender.
Well, I would put it that way. If we would live in an ideal world where all the resources are there to do whatever we think should be done, we don't need gendered sex-conscious medicine. Then every individual will go to his or her doctor or the lab and has a test, and then there would be somebody who would create a specific type of treatment, and the patient would receive that treatment. But we don't live in such a world, and we will never apparently live in such a world, at least into the foreseen future. We are talking not about only providing research which is tailor-made on the patient, but the patient must also be able to afford it, to buy it, to get it. The patient is also, it also has to be accessible for the patient. So this is something which will happen and which still happens for a very small proportion of humanity. Look, for example, now, COVID-19. There are countries which have been vaccinated with 3 boosters already, 70-80%. And there are countries where the vaccines are there, but the vaccination rate is 10% to 5%. And recently I read that biotech had stopped delivering, and also Moderna delivering to certain countries vaccination, because they don't have the infrastructure to distribute them. So personalized medicine is the elite medicine, also very costly. Gender and sex conscious medicine is for me, the physician, to look at you and make my first conscious decision. This is a woman sitting in front of me. This means this and that and that and that is different from the man sitting in front of me, and I should adjust myself to that. So it's not something which is one makes the other superfluous, but they are overlapping, and both attitudes, both directions are towards improving quality of medicine.
How can we implement sex and gender conscious medicine in the medical practice so that in the everyday life of patients and doctors we have this new way of looking at them?
In order to make changes of something in all fields of life, you first of all have to be aware that there's a problem. As long as you are not aware that there is a problem, the rest of the process, find a solution, to implement the solution, isn't there. As long as we have not educated the regulators and the medical institutions and the general public that women and men are different, doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It means they are just different. So in order to achieve the same goal, they have to go different tracks. What I mean to say is, and this is something which is expanding, the European Union is expanding very much, that there is an interest to improve medicine by implementing the sex and gender conscious medicine. So there are congresses, and there are books, and there are the number of publications which are published annually grows exponentially. We need the regulators, we need the institutions, we need the universities to teach, and we need requests of changes from grassroots, meaning that if I'm a woman and I go to my doctor and I get a prescription, I should ask the doctor, has this been evaluated in women? Is it correct that I have to receive the same dosage like a man? Because that's what's written on the package. If you have a headache or have you whatever, non-prescription drugs, you get the same package with the same dosage. If you are a woman, 60 kilogram, or a man, 120 milligram. Then if patients start to ask, and doctors need to answer, they also need to re-educate themselves. So we have to go from both directions, top down and bottom up. And that's how we're going to change things.
As a gynecologist, you deal with pregnancies and fetuses, and I would like to ask you, what is fetal programming? In which way a pregnant woman can influence the health of her baby according to, I don't know, what she eats or what she do or what she...
The issue, I need to make a disclaimer before I answer that question. Specifically today, when we have in the United States that try to overrun Roe versus Wade, abortion rights and so on. So my disclaimer is, I sincerely and truly believe that women should have the right to decide about their bodies and if a woman wants to have a pregnancy or not. Whatever affects a woman during pregnancy, and even before pregnancy, I'll be talking about that tomorrow. Whatever affects a woman will affect her fetus. We used to believe that a fetus in the womb of a woman, he's in heaven. He's surrounded by body temperature fluid, and he gets his food, whatever he needs, and it's protected by... The truth is the contrary. The baby in the womb is actually in a cage, cannot fly, cannot fight or fly. And whatever affects his or her mother will affect the baby. So if she doesn't eat too much, if she eats too much, if she smokes, if she consumes alcohol, and if she is in stress, everything will affect the baby. And then the baby, the mother serves actually as an intermediator between the outside world and the baby. And she prepares her baby according to what it is going to meet after delivery. And I give you a few examples. If the outside world is in war and there is scarcity of food, there's hunger around, the information which the baby gets is build your system in such a way that you can grab any calories which you can get. And if such a baby is born and it's really outside, no food, he will do better than other babies. He will have a survival advantage. But if the baby is born in an environment which is full of food, it will develop obesity and will develop metabolic syndromes and so on and so on. Now, why do I am stressing this point? Because this theory has been proposed in 1995 by a researcher by the name of David Barker. It's called the David Barker hypothesis. The issue is a woman who does a strong diet because she wants to keep her body in a shape which is ideal for her. And for the baby, the information is there's not enough food. And if that baby is born, it will have been programmed to grab food as much as possible. You see women who do diets during pregnancy and they deliver obese babies.
Don't you see the risk of blaming on women who do not behave as the society wants them to behave?
That's the most crucial and difficult question to answer. And this brings me to the question of what is parenthood. What is parenthood? If you have to summarize being a parent in one word, which word would you use? I was thinking a lot about that. I think the one word which describes everything is the responsibility. You are responsible when the child is born, that you don't smoke right into his face, that you don't drink alcohol and give him a bit to sip. You are responsible for his health and for its safety and so on. So during pregnancy, you're also responsible. Here comes the difference. And I want to bring you back to my disclaimer. It's the right of a woman not to continue her pregnancy. But if she knows about risks which she takes, now also the father, by the way, because that's another story, which she takes on herself and on the baby while she's smoking and still continues to smoke, then she has taken the responsibility by the same way as a woman who just sits with her baby and smokes into his face. The regulator should not have the right to punish, but it should have the regulator should have the obligation to inform. And then the parent can make an informed decision. And the situation today is that most people don't know about that. You read every time. There's a column in the paper, 1 glass of alcohol, that's okay. It's even better, 2 glasses. No one knows how much is okay. And it's very, very likely that a very small amount of alcohol can cause damage. So if you want this pregnancy, yes, you make sacrifices. You want this pregnancy, then you work less, and you change your whole body. Then you make also a sacrifice from the moment you decide on pregnancy not to drink alcohol. Still, it's a personal decision, but should be based on information.
But you should have the support of the authorities and institutions if you
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the second one. When I say responsibility, then I don't mean the responsibility only of that woman. It's a responsibility of her husband. It's the responsibility of society to allow her a lifestyle where she can, which will also be beneficial for the baby. Because this is the first time society can take care of future citizens. And that's also much cheaper than to treat sick patients for 84 years or so.
This is what we call the epigenetic mechanism.
Yes.
So how can we describe the epigenetics?
Epigenetics is, epi means above our genome. Our genes, which we have in each cell of our body, in each cell of our body, we have a complete recipe for everything. Basically, a cell from our skin or cell from our foot or our arm can become a finger, can become everything. At a certain stage in development, in biological development, certain genes are switched off and others are switched on. And so does it work. The chromosomes don't change. It's like an electric panel, which many switches. The circuits, electric circles are all the same. But epigenetics switches one on, the other off, one on, the other off. And epigenetics works also to a great extent by influences which come from the outside world.
And so this influences the fetus you are.
Yes, and then the switches are switched on. Some of them can be repaired during the time after delivery. Some of them will never be. And epigenetics is basically transforming the information in the gene into, call it phenotype, the way this individual that presents in the scene itself.
Thank you so much, Professor Glezerman.
It's a pleasure.